Hey, it's Zane. Welcome back. Hope you're doing well today. In this video, I want to share with you 5 crucial reasons why Bitcoin and why now. Why Bitcoin and why now. Whether you're already on the path or you're just getting started, this is going to be, I think, reinforcement for you as to why it's so important to be doubling down right now on your stacking, on your learning, on your allocating, on your capital rotations, on your DCAing, dollar cost averaging, maybe even really taking seriously why you should be thinking about rolling over your underperforming superannuation, your retirement account, setting up an SMSF to acquire Bitcoin. All of this right now is such an important conversation because of everything that's happening in the world in terms of economics, the uncertainty, geopolitics, politics, and this growing movement towards more and more centralized control of our lives and our money. So I want to unpack this for you. Before I get into today's content, just a quick reminder, this week I'm hosting a couple of sessions live on Zoom. These are going to be 90-minute presentations that I'm personally hosting. I've done this a few times in the past. People always give me tremendous feedback. They say they get a lot of value from these sessions. They're highly interactive. So I'd love you to be there. If you'd like to join, just type Zoom in the comments. I'll share the registration link with you. Once you register, you'll get an access link to the webinar, to the event. Now, I'm hosting 2 sessions, and you get to choose which one you'd like to attend, either Wednesday night, 12th of November, 6:30 p.m., or Saturday afternoon, the 15th of November, 5 p.m. Okay, now just note, please, that these times are Brisbane, Australia time. So please check your relative time zone. Wednesday, the 12th of November, 6:30 p.m., Saturday, the 15th of November, 5 p.m., Brisbane time. Type Zoom in the comments if you'd like to be there. I'd love to see you there, and we'll be having a lot of fun, and you'll be getting some really good content. I know that as well. All right. Now I'm going to rip through these 5 points, and I really hope that you get some insight here that is going to really, I guess, hammer home the point as to why Bitcoin exists and why now this is so important. Problem number 1 is that money is being more and more controlled. And once they start infiltrating our financial lives at a deeper level, it really starts to have an effect on freedoms as we know it. And so what we're seeing right now is there are more and more restrictions being applied to accessing our money. And so I would refer to this as a red flag. It is a sign of things to come. And it's not just me saying this. There are people who are outwardly explaining their frustration and their concern and their disgust that where they think their money is safe, right, they entrust their bank with their savings, with their money, with their deposits, they're starting to realize that, hold on a minute, maybe this banking system that we've entrusted for decades, maybe it's not what we think. Okay, and that is exactly what's happening right now. People are starting to get nervous because they're being told by their bank that unfortunately you can't withdraw your money today. 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, whatever it might be. Please come back another day. Please answer this questionnaire. Please explain yourself. Please substantiate what you're going to do with that withdrawal. That is a problem. We've never had to worry about this before, but now we are. It is a sign of the times and where things are going. Additionally, there's a lot of friction and hostility from banks when it comes to people wanting to withdraw large sums of money, or forget large sums of money, even moderate sums of money, onto exchanges, brokerages, to onboard into Bitcoin. Okay, and this is why I guide people and help people. I have resources and ways that we do things that are a lot less frictionless, and it's particularly disconcerting for newbies who are trying to onboard into Bitcoin. They've done the work on it. They know that this is a place to be storing their value, and then all of a sudden at the first point of action, there's a roadblock. They get told with their bank, well, sorry, you can't withdraw your money to that. It's not our policy to enable you or to allow you to send your money to this exchange or to this brokerage. What a concept. You're not allowed to move your own money to invest in something that is transformative. You're not allowed to do that. But if you want to withdraw your money to go to the casino for a weekend, there's no problem with that whatsoever. So this is where we are now. It's a problem. So this all leads to what many believe is programmable money. It's where all of our financial lives become completely controlled to the point where they want to control where, when, and how you spend your money, because they tie it to your digital ID. They tie it to your social credit score. In other words, your behavior. Are you being a good citizen? What social media are you following? What are your political views? What are your medical choices? Okay, and based on all of that, they decide whether or not you can access your money. They tie it to your carbon credits. Have you consumed too much gas, diesel, animal products? Have you traveled too far? Okay, so there's now restrictions on your money. It's programmed. So they know what you've spent it on, and then they can decide to dial it down if you've exceeded your limits. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds dystopian, but do some homework on this. This is where things are going. So it's not just when, where, and what you spend, but even potentially whether or not you're actually allowed to spend your own money. When you put your money in the bank, when you look at the fine print, what you realize is that the money is not yours. You are effectively an unsecured creditor of the bank, meaning that the bank, if it fails, or if it institutes capital controls, or if there's a bail-in, right, meaning that they would freeze with access to people's money, then all bets are off. It's bad luck. You didn't read the small print. That's it. Okay? Now, this has happened very recently, 2022, 23, around there. We had 4 big banks in Silicon Valley in the US. This is exactly what happened. 2019, Lebanon, which was once regarded as the gold standard of banking globally, about 30 years ago. What happened? People woke up one night in, I think it was one morning in October 2019, only to find that their accounts had gone to zero. They couldn't access their money. Even people who had US dollars, the bank immediately transferred them into Lebanese pounds, and they drove inflation through the roof overnight. So effectively, even if people were able to access or had US dollar accounts, they effectively went to zero anyway. And so this is real stuff that has happened in our lifetime, in recent history, and if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this is exactly the path that we're on. So your financial freedom and access to your financial autonomy is really on the line. The other problem is that inflation is not going away. Inflation is not going away. Anyone who thinks that things are going to return to normal, let's say 2018, 2019, where things seemed relatively stable, and then all of a sudden 2020 comes along, all hell breaks loose, and then since then we've just had unprecedented inflation. Guess what? It's going to continue. Okay? It's going to continue. Don't let them tell you that inflation is under control. You only need to price housing. Okay? That is a basic human need. Why is housing not included in the inflation assessment numbers? You and I know why, because if it was, we'd see the truth that real inflation is running at more like 20-25%, rather than the bullshit 3 or 4% that they tell you. The reason is because housing absorbs all of the money printing, all of the financial premium. The moderately and more scarce assets will always absorb the financial premium from the infinite asset, which is the currency. Okay, so housing absorbs the most of it, but Bitcoin absorbs more, which I'll get into in a minute. Your savings are being debased every single year through no fault of your own. The governments cannot pay back their debt, so what do instead? They print money. Why do they print money? Because when they print money, it demonetizes the debt they have. So it makes the debt, on the grand scheme of things, proportionately less. The more money, the bigger the pie they make, the amount of currency in circulation, that debt that was part of a smaller pie, it now becomes less as part of that bigger pie. So it's called demonetization. It's what happens with a mortgage as well, right? Over time, because there's more money printing, which is inflating the price of your house, the debt that you have on your house stays the same. And so that's called demonetization. The debt is becoming proportionately less to the value of your home that is growing at a faster rate. So I hope that makes sense. But inflation is not going away. And it basically means that you need to run harder just to stay in the same place. Okay, every single year you have to do more just to have the same amount of stuff, just to have the same lifestyle. Okay, and this is why people now are run off their feet. Families, kids are staying home for longer. They need more than one income to support a household, a mortgage, groceries, all the bills, etc. And it never used to be like that. And with all of this abundance that we have in the world, and technology and economies of scale and competition and innovation and all of this wonderful stuff, our lives should be getting easier, not harder. And I know for some people they're getting easier because they are a part of the debt-based system, in that they have really scarce desirable assets at the top end of town, and so they are the biggest beneficiaries from inflation. But I'm not talking about that top 5%. I'm talking about everybody else. And so you are essentially running harder to stay in the same place. Another way to put this, Michael Saylor talks about the road to serfdom. You're on the road to serfdom, meaning that you are working exponentially harder for a currency that is growing exponentially weaker. Okay? The Australian dollar right now is to Bitcoin what the Argentine peso is to the US dollar. Okay, you only need to look at this on a price chart. You can Google it for yourself. The Argentine peso was one of the most decimated inflationary currencies on earth over the past couple of decades, and against the reserve currency being the US dollar, it has been absolutely destroyed over that time period. And exactly the same is happening to the Aussie dollar when priced in Bitcoin. So essentially, people in Australia who are saving in Aussie dollars, they're essentially on the road to hyperinflation as if you were living in Argentina. So I know this is really impactful and it's difficult to get your head around, but this is why Bitcoin exists, because it is an opt-out. It is a way to protect and preserve your time and your energy in abstract form, which is your money. Okay? So you must store your value in something that cannot be diluted. Okay? And we'll get into what those things are in a moment. Number 3, the traditional solution has always been real estate in this country. In this country, the traditional path to wealth preservation, wealth protection, has always been real estate. Now, why is real estate no longer the opportunity that it once was? First reason is that real estate prices are out of control, and it basically means that for most people they need to go into enormous debt in order to acquire it. Okay? And, this is why now they're instituting these 95% LVR loans, meaning that you only need 5% deposit to buy a house, particularly for the younger people. But it just means that people are taking on more and more and more and more debt. Okay, so they're getting caught in this trap of endless debt, an endless tightening noose around their neck that they're going to have to continually deal with year after year after year after year. And it really is a trap. But most people, they need a place to live. They want a place to raise a family. They want stability. They want security in their life. They don't want to be at the whim of a landlord. And so they'll do whatever it takes. And if that means that they've got to go into enormous amounts of oppressive debt, then they'll do it. And that's what they're doing. So it really is a trap. And so you're at interest rate risk, meaning that you have no control over whether the Reserve Bank is going to increase or decrease rates, meaning that if they increase them and you've got an enormous amount of debt, you're a sitting duck, right? It could bury you if you can't make those repayments. So they'll just take your house, meaning you lose the equity in it. Property is also, and this is the biggest issue for people who even are wealthy and who have plenty of equity in their home, or maybe even are debt-free, the biggest issue of all is that property is a stationary taxable asset. It cannot be removed from the jurisdiction that it's in. This is why stamp duty, this is why rates, this is why land tax, insurance, compliance, approvals, this endless list of costs associated with holding assets that are stuck in jurisdictions where you have no control over the policy or the rates or the taxation that is attached to them. People are realizing that that lack of portability means that they are a sitting duck with those assets. Okay? And we can see that all of these taxes and rates and land taxes, etc., 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 insurances, they're just getting more and more and more and more every single year, which is becoming a situation where people just can't keep up with those costs anymore. There comes a breaking point where people say, enough's enough, I can't do this anymore. And this is the point where we're very close to right now, I believe. So governments know that they can tax property. Property is a honeypot, and they know that the owners can't move it. Okay, and people are seduced by real estate, the great Australian dream. Everybody thinks that it's the only way forward, and so they just continue to pile into it regardless of how ridiculously priced it is and how untenable the situation is around maintaining it. But what if we enter into this new era where you will own nothing and be happy? Is this really a policy direction? Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you really believe in the Great Reset agenda? Do you believe that there will be changes to property rights? Do you believe that when you hold a title deed, right, with your local council, do you really believe that you absolutely own that asset? Try not paying your stamp duty or your rates for a period of time and see whether you really own that property. Not only that, many would argue that the 100x opportunity that the baby boomers have been the biggest beneficiaries of in real estate in this country, and to some degree I'm sure in the US as well, that 100x opportunity, it's over now. It's over. You know, real estate is an over-financialized, maxed-out casino. Okay, the same opportunity does not exist today that it did, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so it's important that we start looking at real estate in the context of inflation and where we are in the life cycle of currency. The other issue is the retirement trap. The retirement trap. Superannuation returns are not keeping up with real inflation. This is a big problem because if you're keeping your capital, your retirement savings stored in a fund, in an industry fund that is doing 7 or 8%, you are getting eaten alive by inflation. Okay? Now, more and more people are waking up to this now, thankfully, and they're booking consultations with me, or they're taking action upon this for themselves, and they're realizing, well, if I stay in this, there's an enormous opportunity cost when I could be parking that capital that I can't touch until I'm 65 anyway. I could be parking that in a far better performing asset. And what is that? Of course, it's Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is performing at 8 to 9 times the average industry super fund. So if you can't touch the money now and it's sitting there, it's a pool of capital you have access to, why wouldn't you roll it into the best performing asset of all time? And the only way to do that is by setting up a compliant SMSF. So if you need me to guide you on how to get that done, where to go, with a professional who knows exactly how to do this for you, then I'd suggest you book a one-on-one call with me and we can go through everything in detail for you. The other thing to ask yourself is, will your superannuation even exist in retirement? You know, there's a lot of funny business going on. We saw a major industry fund recently collapse, took with it 12,000 superannuation accounts that went to zero. So all of these things you need to be paying attention to. Why Bitcoin? Why now? Due to all these problems. Okay, Bitcoin, if you hold it in self-custody, you are the absolute owner of that asset. It is the ultimate bearer asset. Okay, they can't change the rules on you. They can't take it off you. You have to have it secured in self-custody. And the more you hold, the more optimized your self-custody solution should be. Again, this is something that I talk about in detail on my one-on-one calls. I'll also be touching on this during my Zoom session this week. Again, if you'd like to be there, type Zoom in the comments. But Bitcoin, if you hold it in self-custody, it cannot be seized. The supply is limited, meaning that when you store your value in Bitcoin, you're preserving your purchasing power in an asset that cannot be printed, that cannot be debased, meaning that over time your purchasing power goes up, not down. It gets higher and higher and higher as time goes on. Whereas if you store your purchasing power in dollars, it goes lower and lower and lower as time goes on. All the other assets, dollars, real estate, shares, they're government controlled and regulated, whereas Bitcoin is not. And so it's completely outside the system and outside their purview. It's portable. Portable meaning that it's a global asset that you can take with you, right, with a seed phrase in your head or stored strategically in a location. So long as you have that, you have access to your money anywhere in the world at any time. So it's portable, it's permissionless. You don't need permission from your bank or from any third party in order to access your money. This is why Bitcoin, this is why now. You need to double down on your learning, you need to double down on your allocation. And really, this is why I'm hosting these sessions again this week, because I believe that time is of the essence. There's never been a more important time to be learning about Bitcoin and to be taking this seriously. And it's not just about preserving your money, it's about preserving your sanity, it's about preserving your freedom, it's about preserving your wellness, your health, the well-being of your family. It's about protecting that which you've worked so hard to accumulate over the decades. And it's also about protecting your retirement and ensuring that you're able to live with dignity in the future, being the custodian of your own savings, of your own wealth, and then also even potentially, if you do this right and you act on this now, leaving a financial legacy for your family and your kids if that's important to you as well. So I'm going to leave it there today. I know there's a fair bit to unpack there, a little longer than I usually go in this video, but you know, I think really, really important points. You know, money's becoming more controlled, inflation is not going away, real estate is no longer the ultimate solution. There's an issue with superannuation and retirement. And, you know, Bitcoin just solves all of this when you understand it at a deep level. So I hope you got something from that. If you'd like to join me on Zoom this week, type Zoom in the comments. I'll post the registration link for you, and I'll look forward to seeing you there this week. This is Zane signing out. Have a great day. Bye for now.